Hello, everyone. Welcome to another AR chat. I'm so happy to be here with my co hosts, Stephen Dickens, Nathan Herman, and the fantastic, marvelous, and brilliant Elena Hutchison. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Would
You're
you
the
love
best
to?
hype woman out there, Crystal. You're the
It
best
is pretty
hype
good. You
woman
are a
out there.
good hype woman.
Okay, so I secretly want to be like the Flava Flav of AR.
With
So
the big clock.
yeah, I won't have I have big glasses, right? So Elena,
I just
please.
need you to follow me around and say good things about me wherever you go. That's what I need. I need that in my life, I think.
Don't we all? Everyone could use our little troll of a hype person. But back to the show. Elena, would you please share a little bit with everyone who you are, what you're doing now, how you got to the point of where I like to hype you up and say brilliance?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Crystal. It's great to be here. So I'm Elena Hutchison. I founded a little AR consulting firm called Upright Analyst Relations. I thought for sure somebody
Oh,
would have that name already. I thought of it on a walk, and when I came home and I found the domain had not yet been bought, I was like, okay, I guess I'll just get the domain. I was on what was supposed to be a break from a 10-year career at a company called Medallia. I started there as one of our first sales engineers way back in 2012. I had been in the customer experience space for a bit, and then grew to lead the sales engineering team. So I was leading like a global organization. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, it happened to coincide with us being in Forrester Wave again. And we had been in a Forrester Wave before. It had been really important for the company. It had a big difference maker. And so we're coming back into it 5 years later. Can you imagine 5-year gaps between waves? That's what it was back then. And so I think they were looking around the company thinking, who can take this process on? Like they had really invested in it in 2011. They needed someone to do that same level of investment in 2016. And they looked around and they thought, a sales engineer, like that makes a lot of sense. This is a person who can connect technology and business results and handle a demo and like all the things that we do in a major evaluation look exactly like a sales cycle. And so I got tapped to do that. I happened to be pregnant with my daughter at the time. And so I was looking for a way to get off the road and not be traveling constantly anymore. And what I found through that process was all the skills I learned selling are super applicable to analyst relations, which shouldn't surprise anybody. Over the rest of my career at Medallia, I ended up going back to lead the sales engineering organization again. I took on product marketing and rebuilt that again. When I left there in February of 2023, I was the chief strategy officer. So career is kind of a testament to the strategic value of AR and also the cross-functional nature of it. The Crystal tends to tap me, and a lot of people tend to tap me for the like sales and AR connection because that's sort of where my DNA lives. And in terms of who I work with now, I take on a lot of companies that either are in their first wave or MQ and they're kind of looking
Yeah.
for a Sherpa to help them through that process with some thought leadership. I'm unique in my ability to put my hands on the demo and the briefing and all the pieces just because I've done all those roles. And then I also work with companies that maybe just did that and it didn't go the way that they wanted. And then I help them come back from that. So
So,
I love that work now. Yeah.
Elena, I'm going to jump in there and say, obviously, I'm sure you do more than just Magic Quadrant, MarketScape, or Wave placement. Up and to the right. I love the name, though.
Thank you.
The logo's really nice too, by the way.
Yeah, the
Thank
logo's
you.
fantastic.
The
I was
logo's
just
from
LinkedIn stalking you.
It's from gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of it now, but it's just like a little AI tool. It cost me $100 to kind of, I was like,
All
oh,
right.
here's some stuff. I
It's
played with it a
great.
little bit.
So
Look
Fun
at
fact.
is the company
is
that I used to do it.
this show is 95% post-production AI.
We're going to have to
I
do a
could
show
not do
on that.
this business without it. Like, there's so many applications of AI and just the stuff that I do. I think it's interesting. Like, I don't use it a ton in my client-facing work, right? When I'm working on a Wave or an MQ, I actually think like there are very limited applications of it. I think AI is good at editing down to 1,500 characters in a Wave, but not if you just say, here are 2,000 characters, get it down to 1,500. It's
No,
terrible.
absolutely. This show is 95% post-production AI. It is 75% AI because Steven, Crystal, and myself do not exist in real life.
Amazing.
My question was going to be, we've actually You seen a think lot I'd of make an Discord. avatar look like this, Nathan? Hey, I never said you were good at prompt engineering, to be fair. Well, I had a question.
Go ahead,
I
Nathan.
actually had a
Nathan was
question.
first, and Steven can ask next.
I actually had a question. You go first, because I've got a question about the sales thing I want to pull back to. That's fine. This will relate. So we've seen a lot of discourse around AR being a springboard to senior leadership positions at a vendor. Not a ton of people have necessarily followed that pathway today. In a way, you did, even though your background has so much more. So I'd love to hear you just maybe give some advice to AR professionals out there who do fancy themselves in a chief strategy role or executive level role, but maybe don't know how to get there from A to
Yeah.
B.
That's a great question. And this is another part of my business, and it happened sort of organically. People would find me through podcasts. They'd find me other ways and say, hey, like, I know, I don't need you to teach me what a briefing is, but like, I'm looking to do this path. And so I do take on coaching clients in this way. But what we talk about a lot is executive presence, right? I mean, the difference is how you show up and how you show up to the executive team, right? If your AR program is counting meetings, and that's your main KPI, like you are not thinking strategically and you are not going to make that leap, right? The way I made it was I was hearing stuff from analysts about the market. They were telling me what competitive gaps we had. I was effectively taking those gaps to product, to, from sales, because obviously speaking sales is part of it too. I think sales and marketing have this natural tension, right? And a lot of times sales does not give credit, doesn't trust what marketing is saying. And if you're an analyst relations person who is coming across like a marketer, then sales is just going to be like, you're not relevant to me. I'm dismissing you. And if sales dismisses you, you have no references. You have no ability to get stuff done, like, in terms of where the rubber meets the road, taking an evaluation to market or helping train people on how to manage objections that may be coming up in the context of analysts, right? All these things tactically really happen in sales. That's where this stuff is occurring. And so I think getting sales credible, finding a way to add value to your sales team through analyst relations. And there are ways to do that, in terms of how you interface with analysts, how you can get warm leads from analysts, how you can insert analysts into your sales cycles. If you can get the CRO to value you, right? That's a really important tactical one, right? How your KPIs are set is a big one, because that's going to, if your KPI is meetings, and I started to say this before, then all you're really doing is wasting your executive team's time. I mean, because your job then is to like use their hours, churn their hours. You look good by your KPI, the more of your team's time has been used.
And the flip side of that, I assume, is if your executives' KPI they ask of you is number of meetings, briefings, inquiries,
Help
there's
them.
internal education that needs to happen.
But this is the thing. I mean, a low-level AR person is like, yes, sure, I will track the meetings for you. That is what you asked. I will deliver it. And an executive AR person says, hey, let me walk you through why that's not the best KPI for us. And actually what we need to be thinking about is, sales cycles influenced. How are we tracking how we show up in win-loss reports and like the, analyst mentions in those things? Because when you're doing that, you're operating cross-functionally. And suddenly everybody across the business is looking at you as a resource. Now you're influencing strategy. But not enough AR people. I mean, it's sort of in the name, right? Analyst relations is such a narrow construct. I think this question you guys often ask of who was the first analyst relations. So I was chewing on it. Like,
thank you.
I love it. I mean, I think the first person who put analyst relations on their LinkedIn was a PR person, right? Like, but they weren't really doing, they were setting meetings with analysts. And if you see yourself that way, if that's the job, setting meetings with analysts, making checklists, like making sure that the right people fill out the right things and the right spokespeople show up in the right places, like you're not having a strategic influence that way.
Does analyst relations have a branding problem?
Well, I mean,
it's a bad title. It is a bad title.
But I don't think there is a good title for
that
it.
happens. People just, especially with analyst being a now technical term inside a company. But I don't want to lose the thread, Elena.
I think the challenge is it can't be a job, right? Like the really good analyst, the second half of my answer to the question of who was the first analyst relations person is whoever the first person was who had a relationship with an analyst and started to use it for their own goals. They didn't call themselves analyst relations, right? That's what it is. And so when you call yourself analyst relations, you're putting yourself in a box. And I'm not saying we should, analyst relations shouldn't exist. There are companies that have a need for it. But I'm finding in my business, there are a lot of companies that like fractional analyst relations actually makes a lot of sense. Go to market as fractional. But like the reality is, especially if you're in one or two major evaluations, you have peaks and valleys where like sometimes we're really busy and we need, a lot of analyst relations thinking. And other times, like, we just need a really savvy head of product who knows how to talk to an analyst and build a relationship with them. And
And
that's actually going to work better.
not to cut Steven off, but I want to say that I think that's part of the challenge for internal analyst relations too, is during those valleys, it is your job to provide value, right?
Yes.
There's so much to do outside
100%.
of managing the reports.
And there are things to do, right? Are we thinking about win-loss? You know, that's when you build these relationships. That's when you get analysts with your reference customers. That's when you're thinking about like other investment. Like there is other stuff, but you have to be imagining that stuff in the context of what's this business trying to achieve. And like not enough people have a working knowledge of all the different departments outside of marketing to really achieve that.
I love Elena.
Wait, no, Steven had a question.
Yeah, sorry. We're just not going to let you talk today.
Like, seriously, people, can I cut in?
I got you, Steven. You're good.
So I did enterprise sales for 25 years before I got into product management. So I want to take you back to the point you mentioned, because I think you mentioned that natural tension with marketing. A lot of AR functions kind of report into comms or marketing functions. We've sort of found that out through the path of these podcasts. So if there's a natural tension against sales and marketing, and I've seen it, I've lived both sides of that. I think there's something really valuable in what you were saying that I didn't want to lose in the thread around the sales skills that you brought to AR, and then the connection with AR. I don't think there's anybody better in a company than a salesperson to create a value prop. Because it gets battle hardened in the field, and it lives or dies, and people's commissions, and in some cases half of their salary, is tagged to whether that value prop hunts. Somebody at Worldwide can wave their arms around in front of a chart, but unless it hunts, somebody's half of their salary isn't happening. So I'd love you to just expand on that a little bit, because I don't think enough AR people think about sales as a persona they need to work with and a persona they need to value.
Yeah. No,
I don't know how you don't think about sales. I've come up my whole career through a sales org. In like a
sales is a dirty word for a lot of people.
No, but they're not easy to work with, right? They're out doing their thing. Like they're not super friendly unless they need something from you, right? Like sales is doing its thing, and they don't have a lot of time for people, right? Sales is good sellers qualify their damn time, and they don't have time for you if you have something to add to their life. And so this marketing has a tendency to get in the ivory tower. And Steven, I could not agree with you more. When I led product marketing, first thing I did was get every single one of my product marketers to a point where they could deliver, were certified to give the roadmap, because I knew that sales had always had trouble getting people into meetings to give the roadmap. Product didn't want them doing it, but they would let us do it. And then they were in meetings, and being in meetings was going to allow them to feel that the thing that I felt as a sales engineer, which was, I said those words marketing wanted me to say, and like, it didn't work. And I felt the friction, and you feel that feedback immediately. Too many marketers do not get any moment of that little zing of like, ooh, that one didn't work. And again, it's not like it didn't work in this one meeting. Like any one meeting can be kind of weird, but you have so much pattern recognition as a seller in a week. You know, like, how do you get a marketer that pattern recognition? And we as analyst relations folks like try to get it through, the analysts have it to some extent because they're talking to a lot of buyers and they're hearing this stuff over and over. So we've got a proxy a little bit through what we do. But yeah, so many marketers are sort of, and you see it in the KPIs or just like, demand, all of it. Like that friction is just there. I think the easiest thing you can do is get yourself in some meetings, get yourself in sales cycles.
Yes.
Like if you have any way to do that, find a way to do it.
So I was going to build off that really quickly. I think in a lot of ways, engagement with sales from an analyst relations perspective can be part of a very mature program strategy. Like it's not the first thing you're going to do because it's not the easiest. There's a lot of low hanging fruit, in my opinion, right? There's tracking insights effectively and making sure that those are distributed to the product organization. There's helping with messaging. There's actually like working ahead of a product release. Like I think those are some of the things you can do early on. But what I was going to say is I think the most practical piece of advice is just to become dangerous. So you need to be able to talk about your product at a deeper level than just here's the name of it and here's what it does. Like you have to be a strategic facilitator. Absolutely. And then I think that lends itself to getting involved in conversations with sales. And you shook your head slightly at maybe it being a mature strategy. So I would love to hear your thoughts on
Yeah,
when an AR
my
team.
my immediate reaction to that was like, I think actually at every level, the sellers are the front line to what is happening, what are we hearing, what messaging is working. So why would I wait to engage with them? Like, I think in every place, like if analyst relations is relevant to this company, then sales is relevant to my program. Full period, full stop. Like, why am I doing any of this if it's for me and in my whole consultancy? Like, I don't personally, and I would tell this to a client who called me, if your goal is not to influence sales, I'm the wrong consultant for you. And like, maybe there are reasons for analyst relations outside of that, but I'm not interested in them. Like, I want to move revenue. And so, and that's true anytime you start selling to enterprise, right? Like, and analysts are relevant even when you're small, if you're competing for enterprise deals, right? Like, if you are in a place where analysts are advising on your category, where buyers are calling them to look at technologies, in this space, then analysts are relevant to you. And that is not necessarily just a big AR thing. Like, you don't have to have a big program to leverage that. Actually, like, when you're small, it can be just as relevant. So yeah, I had an immediate reaction to that because I actually think like getting into the AR stuff early is really valuable. You might as
I
well.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Sales does.
Right, and I think where we get tied up with the maturity, right, has more to do with the maturity of your internal stakeholders and how they're thinking about where the analyst is useful and where the AR practitioner is thinking about how do they get into the executive mindset of, right? Because I think historically, like you were talking about, like if you think your job is to book meetings and connect the right people, you're not thinking about the P&L. And I think this is where like my background having always been in sales and having a big part of my comp being tied to profitability and growth. So I'm always thinking about, did we close the deal? Did the message hit? Where were the workflows working, not working? So like if you're not dialed in and you're still in a nascent perspective of the profession, right?
So
Then it
I,
has more to do with that maturity as opposed to like the maturity of your go to market, in my opinion. This is why we're talking to people like Elena, right? What is the job of AR and how do we keep our budgets? How do we keep our jobs? How do we say like this is how we're useful, and it has been done over and over. You just may not have heard about it.
I also just want to.
I know we've only got a couple of minutes with Stephen, and I just want to like, if I can twist it, I think there's something happening here too with how people buy that we all as AR practitioners need to be thinking about, right? Because like the point of analyst relations, and the reason I go to Forrester or Gartner or IDC to some extent is that I'm de-risking a decision, right? Like, I want to not get fired for my software decision. And so, and I think, and I'm seeing all these, like everybody's on LinkedIn talking about Gartner's recent, earnings report, and Forrester's even worse. And like, what's happening to this space? My theory is that the dot of things that you have to de-risk in that way is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And there's a lot of reasons why that's happening, right? Product-led growth is a trend that is creating that, where like, I don't have to spend $1 million to implement software anymore. I can buy it in a department, implement it myself. AI doing coding for us makes the cost of implementation much lower than it used to be.
That's interesting.
There are all kinds of things that suddenly make the riskiness of software purchases dramatically lower than it used to be. And we're on a curve like this right now. And so the number of, the IT categories, like, still high for now. Like, I'm still going to call Gartner for that stuff. It's still customer facing. If I screw it up, there can be security concerns and whatever. Like, I can still get fired for messing that up. But to the extent that software purchases can be bought slowly, can be bought by me swiping a credit card and spending 10K, putting my hands on it, making sure that it meets my goals, like, I don't need Gartner or Forrester anymore. And so, I think this question for our space is a really interesting one. Where you guys ended in your sort of prompt was, where's the space going? And like, the thing that's in the back of my head is that, right? Like, is the reason we're seeing this dynamic with Forrester and Gartner actually that the point of them is to de-risk software decisions, and we're seeing new ways of de-risking software decisions because the way we build software is different and the way we test and buy is changing.
I love it. I think I also want to be conscious, or cautious is the better word at the same time, that like this is all still so nascent. Like immediate term shocks, like a fall in the Gartner share price. Forrester's a little bit of a different situation, right?
It is.
That's been consistent. In some ways, I think it's too early to tell what the ultimate change to buying behavior will be, but maybe that's just me,
It is
speaking
early.
from the perspective of dealing with analysts every day.
It's absolutely early. But the macro of the thing I just said is happening, right? People are buying software in new and different ways. They are buying in a lighter purchase. They do want, we all know, like Gartner's put this out for, people don't want to buy big, giant software purchases.
And software companies are changing the way they sell too, right?
Correct.
A
Because they have
POC
to. They don't want to.
it can be a big win right now.
Right.
Or
Yes.
just getting into a specific team within a larger enterprise is a big win because that gives you a pathway to prove that the software works, that you're reliable. Yeah.
But if I can sell that way and I can buy that way, then I don't need the de-risking of Forrester and Gartner in the same way that I did before.
But what about CIOs and CTOs who are still of that more traditional mindset where I've never been fired for buying somebody in a Gartner Magic
I mean,
Quadrant?
look, like old damn it, Sky Hard, financial services will do this for a while, but then they won't.
Yeah.
Very.
There's less risk. Don't go write a LinkedIn post.
Yeah, okay, good. As long as you tag me.
Also, can we talk to you all day long?
Very nice to meet you.
I just want to talk to you all day because it's such a fun brain exercise.
Yeah, we can
Before
still
we
hang.
wrap up,
I'll need to run shortly, but I can hang for a minute if we want to keep going.
Before we wrap up, I want to try to not rescue myself earlier, but talk from my perspective, as an in-house practitioner right now. Some truths. I think most AR teams are still either reporting into comms, marketing, or product marketing. Product marketing in many organizations is a subset of marketing. Not always, right? I think that there are just so many things that AR teams can do to have an impact within the marketing organization that could make a tangible difference to the success of the organization, which in turn has an effect on sales before you even necessarily get caught up on everything you can do from the wider perspective. I 100% agree. I think getting involved, ingrained in sales, helping win deals, that is where we need to go. That is the holy grail. That's the gold standard. I just think that if you're looking at this from the perspective of your program today and you're having heart palpitations because you're not set up that way yet, I just think there's a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit that you can attack to add value as you are on that path to what you talked about.
Yeah, no, look, there's so many places that AR with an open mind can add value. And I don't mean to, messaging is absolutely one of them. It's just not the one I happen to be personally most
That's fair.
interested in. But yeah, I mean, I think, and product marketing, I think, is the right place for analyst relations to sit typically if you're not going to elevate up onto it. Personally, I think in some ways product marketing I was the chief strategy officer with product marketing, analyst relations, and the sales engineering team in my remit. And that was an elegant solution because essentially I was sitting over all of the things where we were taking the technology itself to market, like public facing, whether it was in an individual sales cycle or the website or whatever. Like I owned that, how we were going to talk about it and how we were going to educate about it. Oh, look who's back. Couldn't get enough.
The dynamic nature of my calendar. The meeting was pushed back. I'm like, can I come back in? Am I allowed back in after being disruptive?
So, Elena, I love that. I think that's an interesting perspective, having all those teams report into you as a chief strategy officer.
It's unique. I mean, you're not going to replicate that.
Teach a master class on AR executive presence and strategic alignment. Seriously.
It's an interesting, what would you guys add to it? Like, I mean, there are obvious things to me, right? Like you got to think KPI, the business KPIs, right? I think one of the things it's a fascinating trend across all of my clients is I think we have a tendency, we get really good at all the decks I get are really good at, they start with a architecture and they're like, here's our product, here's how it works, here's the differentiation. And I'm like, okay, but we did add some stuff up front about like who we're trying to be in the market, how do we prove that we're going to continue to win this market? Like all that stuff is just very unnatural and I think for a lot of AR practitioners too, right? We take the sales deck and then we're like, here's our analyst deck. And that's obviously not quite right. So, I think that's been the really eye-opening things for me is just how prevalent it is in this space across all my client base of just like, can we just use the sales deck for this? Like, no, there's a whole other lens of like,
you
how
have
this
to
business
sell your
gonna
vision.
continue to exist. And it's also like, how do I prove to you? Because the entire axis here is this business will exist 10 years from now and you can bet on it. But you don't tell buyers that in the same way. You tell them we'll service you well, like you're going to have a good experience with us. You're going to it's a vibes thing for
Also,
a buyer.
Really smart buyers will say, especially if you're a newer company, how do I know that this investment in you? Because I've actually had that question in sales cycle. Like, we're putting a lot into this relationship. What are your broader plans? Are you going to be around in 5 years?
Right.
People buy the company before they buy the product.
That's it.
People buy the company before they buy the product.
But it's the last.
It gets so ignored.
Very unnatural for AR people to think that way, right? And product marketers too, right? We talk about the product, we think about the product differentiation, and we don't think about how do I give. I mean, this was a lot of what I learned from the process of Medallia going public and then being taken private again. Like I was there for helping build the roadshow stuff and then helping through all of that process made me keenly aware of like, oh, these analysts are getting asked by all these investors what they think of us. And so having that message is actually really important. And I didn't have that appreciation because I hadn't been through all those phases of life yet.
I was just going to say, Nathan, just to punctuate again, we were just on the PMA AR summit, Nathan and I. You had FOMO a little, Stephen. And one of the most important
I see you in my LinkedIn feed, two of you on camera. I'm like, where was this party that I wasn't invited to?
Well, I thought it was really important because we talked about analyst relations throughout the go-to-market. It's like all the stages. And I loved the piece where Nathan shared about, we think about top of funnel as some asset that's all about lead gen. And that's where people sort of think and start thinking about AR. Like, oh, we're going to get this note and therefore we're going to get emails. But the most important part is at the executive level, as they're starting to put together vision, their strategic plan, who we're targeting, TAM sizing, like all of that part. And I think that really is paralleling what you're saying, Elena.
And it wasn't just like AR is, in the sales cycle. It was more that when we talk about go-to-market, I think a lot of us naturally think funnel, like go-to-market equals funnel, but there's so much to do before the go-to-market funnel to actually make sure that you have a successful go-to-market.
I've been with the Broadcom guys this week and VMware, and I've had this conversation probably 5 times this week around Broadcom relatively for the first time is having a conversation about being a brand in tech. It's been a company in tech. And I ended up in a conversation, and I'll relay it here. You turn up sometimes, and you were talking about it there, Elena, as the investor side of this. And this is why I do a few of these types of speaking sort of engagements. Everybody's got a 401k. Everybody's tracking the stock market. Everybody's thinking about what a lot of people are watching the financial press. They form an opinion about a company from how they're doing from their stock price, whether they should buy the stock, whether they should track it, what they read in Barron's, what they saw on CNBC. They think all those thoughts, is this company successful? Before they start a product journey, everybody wants to be tagged to the cool kid at school when they're 15. It's exactly the same in the market when you're buying tech. You want to be buying from the cool kid whose stock is exploding, who you see on CNBC, before you get into a product story. Product marketers don't think that thought. Analyst relations people typically don't think that thought. It's like product-led growth people don't think that thought. But people buy the company before they buy the product, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, thinking back to and this is not my area of expertise, but I certainly lived it as a seller, right? Like it is like sort of a vibes and a community thing. Like, who are the people I'm going to be learning from? Who are the people I'm going to be with? Who are the people I'm going to be hanging out with at the conference for this software versus the alternative? Like, those are real considerations for buyers because it does influence their success to some extent. But like Stephen, as a person who's sold, like, you understand that like our motivations when we buy software are not necessarily only to buy the best software, right? It's also to, like, it can be about my personal career. It can be about social stuff. It can be about what vendor is going to let me travel and and build my own career. Like, there are so many motivations that humans have and analysts have, right? And this is another one of those things that kind of comes from my sales background. But like, so many analyst relations people, I think analyst relations people who have been trained do this, but like new analyst relations people do not understand the fundamentals of like, I'm building a relationship with a human where I'm trying to understand what they're trying to achieve every day. Right. And so, if I know that my analyst is about to be speaking at a conference, like, can I offer up my client's case study packaged and built so they can just stick it in? Because I know that this analyst's life is going to be easier if they don't have to go source a case study. Like, it's that kind of stuff where you're just like, I'm champion building, right? I'm making your life easy so that you don't have to, so that you can go play whatever sport, play rugby after work or whatever. Like, and you don't have to, and then we've created good feelings. And my case study is the one that you're presenting at the conference. Like, that's the game. And it's the same way with selling, right? It's like, that's a champion. Like, that's how do I make your life easy so that you are selling my product internally as easily as you possibly, as friction-free as you can.
You're literally speaking my language and my cheat code, because I'll tell you, for that same presentation that Nathan and I did together, I moved to the East Coast the week before, so I was completely just tapped. And I sent out 3 messages to 3 clients and was like, "Hey, I really want to highlight this work that you've done. If you could give me either a voice note or a quick write-up about a time that you insert whatever, I would be so grateful." And those were my client case studies of excellent AR driving things forward. And I got them within 1 hour of sending a message.
That's amazing.
And it's all about creating those clear messages because they know that I will absolutely make them shine.
It's a win for them, right? And this is what it is. It's about understanding who these humans are and what is a win for them. Is a win for you that you don't have to go find a case study and you can go play rugby tonight? Is a win for you that like I'm promoting your career and the cool stuff you're doing? Like, is a win for you that I've de-risked this purchase? And so you're not going to get fired because I'm a Gartner leader. Like, this is what we're in the business of doing, is understanding those motivations
100%.
and playing.
Well said.
Nowhere did AI create those relationships.
Well said. Well said. So let me transition us into kind of our final question here. I'm going to give you 2 options. So our normal final question is, where do you think this profession is going? Whether that's in 12, 18, 36, 10 year, you name it. You pick your time frame. The second question is, since you have had such an interesting past, you were a chief strategy officer. What is your ideal, insights organization look like? Like, what do you think is the superpowered center for strategic intelligence that an organization could have? Let's say you're given the reins, you're given the keys, you're given the budget. What would you do?
It's fun. Well, I'll take the second one, although I haven't thought about it at all. So you're going to get like completely off the cuff, because I kind of hit on the first one already, right? With this like Gartner and sort of how are we buying thing. Ideal sort of customer insights. I mean, I start with Gong or whatever your call recording is, right? Because again, to what Stephen and I keep hammering, like, how do I hear what sales is doing all the time pervasively? And you got to make sure that your best sellers are using it, because that's one of the biggest challenges, is like the really good people turning that thing off. So you got to solve that problem so that you're getting like the really, how do I compare what the really good people are doing and whatnot? What questions are people asking? What objections are coming up repeatedly? Like, what is all that stuff?
100%.
And then can I take that list to the analyst community and say, hey, like, are you hearing similar things, right? What, you got to be thoughtful about that, obviously, because you don't want to like bring a list of objections to analysts, but in a smart way. Like, how would you
want to bring it to the right analyst, though, that you've built the relationship with?
Yeah. You saw my immediate knee-jerk reaction to like, I'm not going to bring negative competitive intelligence straight to an analyst, but thoughtfully, right? You could think about the ways in which you would do that. But the idea of like, here's our list. What would this look like for our biggest competitor? What do you think those questions are for them? I think like that might be a way I would ask it, right? I think that's a really interesting line of inquiry. And you're being transparent. I might edit that list of objections or questions to ones that I feel pretty comfortable with, show it, and say, here's kind of what I get when I look at our stuff. It'd be like the sub list of stuff that I feel like is manageable. I feel like I can sort of work with them, or that I want their advice on, or whatever. What do you think this list would look like at competitor X? Like from your conversations, what do you think those the objections they're hearing are, and how can we take advantage of them?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really interesting inquiry, right? Where you could start to dig into what do they know, what are they hearing? Because they obviously are hearing those questions, and they could validate the questions you're hearing. So that's one place. I mean, obviously, analyst relations, I think you've got such a wealth of knowledge in any kind of call work. Now I didn't have the benefit of all of this when I was doing this work much. I mean, we were starting to have Gong and call recording and those kinds of things, but it's just exploded. And willingness to do it has just exploded as well over the last several years. There's so much digital breadcrumb. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about customer experience here. That's obviously what my entire career was in, but like any kind of customer feedback, a win-loss is a big one. So one of the first things I do with every AR program I get involved with is make sure that we've got a question in a win-loss survey about what analysts came up.
Yes.
We got to understand who did you trust in this sales cycle? Like it might be the analysts we think of. It might be, this is a place where I've found a lot of richness in terms of third party, or like other tier analysts too. Third parties, other, LinkedIn influencers, like people I wouldn't have thought of who aren't like the obvious people, but I turn to this. I believe we are seeing now and going to see more and more communities that we don't have immediate access to popping up in those lists, right? I asked on Pavilion what software I should use and got feedback, or I asked in a community that I'm in. Like I personally think that the antidote to kind of the like AI everything across the internet is sort of asking a friend, right? Asking a peer, asking someone who has done this thing before what they used and getting personal recommendations. And so I think we're going to see more of that. I do see it in the communities that I'm in, Pavilion, Product Marketing Alliance. Like you see some of that happening organically. And, Reddit has way more B2B content than it used to. And, people are going to those kinds of communities asking these types of questions. I'm not sure Gartner Peer Insights or G2 or those kinds of places like are really viewed as super credible. Like they're good inputs to the LLMs, right? So the LLMs are using them because that's the public information that they have, and they really rely quite heavily on that data. But I think private communities are going to be a big part of it as well. So it'll be interesting to watch whether there start to be ways to tap into that data too.
I think you're onto something with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is getting outsized influence. I think we're also tuned into it. I think if I just had something blow up this week, I just put what I thought was a quick take on things I was looking for from this VMware conference. I got 42,000 impressions on this LinkedIn post. Whoa. And I'm like, wow. I just wrote it whilst the keynote was going on. I think there is just some people where you get your information from and where people's buyer's journey starts. And I'm seeing so many of the analysts the session this week was influencer and analysts track. So people sort of tilt their head about the word influencer. Influencing a sales cycle, if you take the most positive spin of that word, that comes from so many places. And a Gartner MQ is one of those influential places, and an outsized influential place. It is absolutely not the only influential place. There is lots of other influential places that influence those sales cycles.
Yeah. I'm finding the opposite with LinkedIn. It may just be my algorithm or my lack of engagement with it. Like I'm struggling right now, not to get engagement, but to like find things in my feed that I'm interested. It's all people wanting to sell me consultant stuff at this point, and like I'm struggling to sort of engage, but I think that's
right.
Probably what I'm.
My LinkedIn, that algorithm, it's like crazy, and I feel like mine is getting dialed in better the more that I'm engaging. It's like it rewards you for engagement, which is also like some days I kind of feel like, bro, I got to do work.
Right.
Can't be here
Oh, I
all
know,
day.
exactly. Can't be here all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to watch. I mean, it's felt a little, we're moving into an era where people are craving authenticity and, and LinkedIn is sort of the opposite of that, right? I mean, like people are not, LinkedIn is a very polished, place where you
Well,
show.
so you say that though, but I think we had Becca from LinkedIn on the other week.
Remember Becca Chambers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had her, and she's blown up because she's authentic.
Yeah. But I think that's the answer is you have to sort of show up and be willing to be controversial and.
Well, just be your real self. You don't have to be controversial, I don't think. Just be real. So many people are like...
I think it's what people are hungry for.
Yeah.
Hence the bro.
The bro was real. Bro!
Super real.
For me. My kid uses it. And I'm like...
God, my teenage daughters call me that. I'm like, bro. I'm like, seriously?
It's my effort to not show my Zennial side because I still wear skinny jeans and no-show socks. So
why would we not... Why would we show our socks, Crystal?
And get ugly tan lines. I know. We're totally deviating. I know.
Yeah, should we wrap it up? I feel like we're devoted.
Yeah, Nathan, this is going somewhere we can't add any value. So let's...
Is anybody else just mainlining K-pop Demon Hunters, or is that just
my wife has watched it so many times. I've watched it 3. It's a great movie.
So
Beth
good.
Monty at IBM put us onto it a couple weeks ago, and I still haven't gotten there because my kid's a little too young.
I think I've watched that movie about 5 times in 10-minute chunks. I don't think I haven't watched the whole movie, but I've watched all of it.
Dipped in.
Well, I suppose to keep it on track and wrap up the episode, much like in K-pop Demon Hunters, this has been a masterclass in how to make your program golden.
Oh man, nailed the ending. 10 out of 10.